I went on a blind date last Friday and found out the girl I spent the whole evening falling for is my boss's daughter. I know how that sounds. Just stay with me. My name is Cole Harper. I'm 26 years old and I work as a junior marketing analyst at Pinnacle Group in Denver. It's one of those companies where people use words like synergy and brand alignment in normal conversation without any sense of irony. My job basically means I make slideshows, sit in meetings, and try very hard not to say anything that makes me look stupid in front of people who have been doing this for 20 years. My boss is Linda Marsh. She is the CEO. She built Pinnacle Group from a two-person operation running out of a rented office space into the company it is today. She is sharp, focused, and successful in a way that makes you feel like every decision you have ever made in your life has been slightly wrong. When she walks into a room, people stop talking mid-sentence. Not because they are scared exactly. It is more like when a storm rolls in and the air changes and you just know something serious is about to happen. Nobody calls her anything except Ms. Marsh. I had worked at Pinnacle for 9 months before last Thursday. I had spoken directly to Linda Marsh maybe 4 times. Each conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Each one left me slightly convinced I had said something wrong. So when she appeared next to my cubicle on Thursday afternoon without any warning, without an email, without even the sound of footsteps, I assumed I was in some kind of trouble. I was eating a sandwich that had been in the office fridge since Tuesday. I was reading a report nobody was going to look at until next week. And then she was just there, standing next to my desk in a gray blazer, looking at me the way someone looks at a document they are trying to decide is worth keeping. I sat up so fast I nearly knocked my lunch off the desk. She asked me one question before I had time to say a single word. "You're not seeing anyone right now, are you?" I want you to really picture that moment. My CEO, standing at my cubicle, asking me about my relationship status on a Thursday afternoon like it was a normal item on her calendar. I told her no. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. She pulled the empty chair from the desk beside mine, sat down in it, and said 4 words that completely short-circuited my brain. "My daughter needs a date."
Ich starrte her.
She stared back. Neither of us said anything for about 3 seconds, which felt much longer. She explained it calmly, the way she probably explains quarterly targets. Her daughter Haley was 25. She graduated from Northwestern. She worked in environmental law at a nonprofit and she was, according to Linda, brilliant, driven, and completely incapable of having a personal life. Her own mother had been calling every week asking why Haley never went out, never met anyone, never seemed to do anything that wasn't related to work. Linda said she was tired of the phone calls. Then she said something that made me realize this conversation was stranger than I thought. She told me she had been watching me. Not in a strange way, she said. In the way that a person who runs a company pays attention to the people who work for it. She told me I was reliable, that I worked hard without making a show of it. That 3 weeks ago, I had stayed late on a Wednesday night to help Greg from the accounting department figure out a new database system that had nothing to do with my job and everything to do with the fact that Greg looked completely lost, and I felt bad leaving him there alone. I did not know anyone had seen that. I was almost certain the building was empty. She told me dinner was set for Friday night at a restaurant downtown called Caldwell's. 7 o'clock. Her daughter would be there. All she was asking for was 1 meal, 1 real conversation, and maybe a second meeting if we both felt like it was worth it. Then she said something I was not expecting. She told me I could say no. She was not ordering me. There would be no professional consequences if I turned her down. She said it plainly and without any pressure, and somehow that made the whole thing feel even more surreal because if she had just told me to go, it would have felt like a work assignment. But she was asking, and I did not know what to do with that. I asked if I could think about it. She said I had until end of business that day. Then she stood up, put the chair back exactly where she found it, and walked away down the hall like the conversation had never happened. I sat there for a full minute without moving. I texted my roommate Brody at 2:17 p.m. His response was a series of laughing emojis followed by, "Bro, you have to go." I made an actual pro and con list in my phone notes like a person who has completely lost their grip on reality. The pros were things like free dinner and she thinks you're decent enough to meet her kid, which is kind of a compliment. The cons were a long and deeply reasonable list of ways this could turn into a disaster. At 4:56 p.m., I walked to Linda's office. Her assistant looked up at me with an expression that was either sympathy or warning. I still don't know which. I knocked. She said, "Come in." I opened the door, and before I could second-guess myself, I told her I would do it. For just a moment, something shifted in her face. It was quick. If I had blinked, I would have missed it. But it was there, and it looked almost like relief. She told me she would send the details. Then she said one more thing before I turned to leave. "Just be yourself, Cole. That's genuinely all I'm asking." I went home that night and barely slept. Friday came fast. I changed my shirt twice. I forgot my wallet, went back inside, and stood in my kitchen for a moment wondering what exactly I was walking into. Brody was on the couch watching TV and eating cereal straight from the box. And as I headed for the door, he said, without even looking up, "Try not to fall in love with your boss's kid, man." I told him that was not going to be a problem. I really believed that at the time. I got to Caldwell's at 6:52. The restaurant had low lighting and candles on every table and the kind of quiet that tells you the prices on the menu are going to be painful. The host confirmed my reservation, led me to a table near the window, and asked if I wanted anything while I waited. I asked for water. I checked my phone. 6:55, 6:58, 7:01, and then the door opened. She walked in and I forgot every single thing I had planned to say. Haley Marsh was wearing a simple navy dress and her auburn hair was loose around her shoulders, catching the light from the entrance in a way that made everything around her look slightly less interesting by comparison. She was talking to the hostess near the door, laughing at something, completely relaxed, and I remember thinking that she moved through the room like someone who was comfortable anywhere she went. Then she turned toward my table and our eyes met and something in my chest did a thing I was not prepared for. She walked over. I stood up a little too fast and nearly knocked my water glass off the table, which was a great start. "Cole?" she asked. "Yeah. Hi. You're Haley." "Unfortunately," she said, and smiled. It was a slightly crooked smile, the kind that looked like it was in on a joke. And just like that, without any effort at all, the tension dropped about 50%. She sat down and immediately said she was sorry about the whole situation. Her mom had called her Wednesday night and laid out the plan. Haley said she had spent 10 minutes staring at the wall after the call ended trying to decide how she felt about it. "She told me you were one of the good ones," Haley said, picking up the menu but looking at me over the top of it. "Said you helped someone from accounting with a database thing, even though it wasn't your job." She saw that. My mom sees everything. It's actually a little unsettling. We both laughed, and I felt something loosen in my chest that I had not realized was tight. The waiter came. Haley ordered the pan-seared salmon. I got the short rib. We split a bread basket that arrived warm and I forgot to be nervous for about 4 straight minutes, which was the longest I had gone all evening. She asked me what I actually did at Pinnacle, and I gave her the honest version, not the polished one. I told her I made presentations that were mostly decorative and attended meetings where my main contribution was nodding at the right times. She laughed like I meant her to, but then she asked something that caught me off guard. "Do you like it there?" Like, actually. Nobody at work ever asked that. I thought about it for a second. "It's fine," I said. "It's not what I thought I'd be doing, but it pays rent and the people are mostly decent." That's a very diplomatic answer. I've had 9 months of practice. She smiled again. Then I asked her about her work, mostly to be polite, and that's when everything shifted. She told me she was in the middle of a case against a manufacturing company that had been dumping chemical runoff into a river system outside Colorado Springs for the better part of 3 years. She explained how the legal process worked, the obstacles, the slow grind of it, the moments where it felt pointless, and then the moments where a single piece of evidence made everything click into place. Her hands moved while she talked. Her whole face changed. She leaned forward without noticing she was doing it. I watched her describe something most people would find complicated and dry, and I could not look away. That is when I knew I was in real trouble. We talked through dinner like we had known each other longer than 90 minutes. She was funny in a quiet way, where the joke landed before you realized it was coming. She asked good questions and actually waited for the answers instead of just preparing her next sentence. At some point, the plates were cleared and a small tiramisu appeared between us, and I realized I had stopped thinking about Linda Marsh entirely. Then my phone lit up on the table. A message from an unsaved number I recognized immediately. Linda Marsh. How is it going? I turned the phone toward Haley without thinking. She looked at the screen, closed her eyes briefly, and said, "Just tell her it's fine. She'll stop if you give her something." I typed back, "Going well. Haley is great." The reply came back in under 30 seconds. I read it once. Then I read it again because I was sure I had misread it the first time. This dinner was also a performance evaluation. Assistant director role. You've been approved. We'll discuss Monday. I read it out loud. I don't know why I read it out loud. I think my brain just stopped filtering. The moment the words left my mouth, the temperature at the table changed completely. Haley went very still. The color drained from her face in a way that was uncomfortable to watch. She looked at me with an expression that was trying to figure out if I had known about this the whole time. "She what?" "I didn't know," I said immediately. "I promise you, she never mentioned anything about a promotion. She just asked if I'd have dinner with you." Haley was already pushing back her chair. It scraped against the floor and a couple at the next table glanced over. "Did she say anything about your job when she came to your desk?" Her voice was steady but tight, like she was working hard to keep it that way. "Anything at all?" I thought back to Thursday. Linda had been clear. No professional consequences if I said no. But she had said nothing about what saying yes might mean for my career. "She said there'd be no consequences if I turned it down," I said slowly. "But she never told me there'd be benefits if I agreed." Haley stood up fully. She picked up her purse and pulled out her wallet with slightly shaking hands. "I'm not angry at you," she said. And I actually believed her. "I just can't sit here right now knowing my mom turned me into some kind of job interview." "Haley, wait. Please." She looked at me, and for one long second I thought she was going to sit back down. Her expression softened just slightly, like she was weighing something. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her jaw tightened. It was Linda. She answered it. I could hear her mother's voice through the speaker but couldn't make out the words. Whatever was being said, Haley's face went through 3 different emotions in about 4 seconds. The anger folded into something harder to read. Her free hand found the back of the chair. "What hospital?" she said quietly. More talking from Linda. Okay. I'm coming." She hung up and looked at me with the most conflicted expression I had ever seen on a person. "My grandfather had chest pains. They took him in about an hour ago." She set some cash on the table. "I'm so sorry. Tonight was actually really good until it wasn't." "Go," I said. "Seriously, just go." She looked at me one more time, like she wanted to say something else but couldn't find the right words. Then she was gone, and I was sitting alone at a table for 2 with half a tiramisu and a text message still glowing on my phone screen, trying to figure out how one evening could feel so right and fall apart so completely at the same time. At 10:47 p.m. that same Friday night, I was sitting on my couch in a dark apartment eating cereal I did not want, staring at a text message I had already read 11 times. Brody was out. The TV was off. The only light in the room was coming from my phone screen, and I kept picking it up and putting it back down like it was going to say something different if I waited long enough. It never did. This dinner was also a performance evaluation. Assistant director role. You've been approved. I kept turning the evening over in my head. The bread basket. The way Haley leaned forward when she talked about her case. The crooked smile. The moment right before her phone rang when I genuinely thought she was about to sit back down. All of it felt real. All of it felt like something. And then one text message had taken the whole thing apart in about 30 seconds flat. I put my phone face down on the cushion beside me and stared at the ceiling. That lasted about 4 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. I picked it up expecting Brody asking me to unlock the door. It was an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I am very glad I did not. "Hey, it's Haley. I got your number from my mom's assistant. I already know that's a weird way to start a message, so just go ahead and judge me." I sat up straight. I typed back, not judging. How's your grandfather? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Came back. False alarm, actually. Chest pains turned out to be really aggressive acid reflux. He's fine. Already told 2 nurses they don't know what they're doing. So that's a good sign. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. I told her I was relieved. She said she was too, but also slightly suspicious, because her grandfather had a history of convenient health scares whenever he felt like the family was not paying enough attention to him. She said the last one had been triggered by an entire bag of spicy chips eaten in one sitting. On purpose. I told her that was either very funny or very concerning. She said probably both. We texted back and forth for a while, and it felt easy in a way that surprised me, given how the night had ended. She apologized again for leaving the way she did. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She said she should not have assumed I was in on whatever her mom had planned. I told her that, honestly, given the circumstances, the assumption was reasonable. Then she said something that made me set my cereal bowl down on the coffee table. I actually had a really good time tonight, before everything went sideways. I looked at that message for a moment before I typed back. Me too. Best first date I've had in a long time. Maybe ever. She replied, that's either a really sweet thing to say or a sign that your dating life has been genuinely rough. I wrote back, little bit of both. There was a pause. Longer than the others. I watched the screen and did not put the phone down this time. Then, are you free Saturday afternoon? I was free. I told her I was free. She told me about an outdoor market over on Ridgeline Avenue. Local vendors, food trucks, open air. Very public, she said. Very casual. And then she added one more line at the end that I read twice just to make sure I had it right. Don't tell my mom. I smiled at my phone like a complete idiot. Saturday arrived and Brody thought the whole thing was the funniest series of events he had ever personally witnessed. He sat at the kitchen table eating toast and listing every possible way this could go wrong, while I stood in front of the bathroom mirror trying to look like I had not thought too hard about what I was wearing. I told him he was not helping. He said he knew. He kept going anyway. I got to Ridgeline Market at 1:08 p.m. It was already busy. There was a food truck near the entrance selling something that smelled incredible, and a guy with an acoustic guitar playing near the fountain, and about 50 booths arranged in uneven rows selling everything from homemade candles to questionable oil paintings. I stood near a jam vendor and checked my phone and tried to look like a person who was not nervous. Then I saw her. Haley was coming through the entrance in dark jeans and a cream-colored jacket, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, squinting slightly against the afternoon light. She looked entirely different from the night before. More relaxed. More like herself, maybe, as if Friday's version had been a dress rehearsal and this was the real thing. She spotted me and raised one hand in a small wave. You're early, she said when she reached me. I'm punctual, I said. There's a difference. She gave me the crooked smile. Sure there is. We started walking through the market, and something about being outside, in the noise and the crowd and the open air, made the leftover tension from Friday dissolve faster than I expected. There was no candlelit table, no dress code, no performance. Just 2 people walking past booths of hot honey and hand-thrown pottery and terrible skyline art. She stopped at a salsa vendor and sampled one flavor before buying 3 different jars. I asked her why she bought 3 if she only tried one. She said she liked to commit to things. I filed that away without saying anything. We got lemonade from a truck near the back and found a bench in a patch of shade and sat down. A few kids were running through the fountain nearby. The guitar guy had switched to something slower. It was the kind of afternoon that made everything feel slightly more manageable than it actually was. Then Haley turned toward me with a look that told me the easy part of the conversation was ending. Are you going to take the promotion? I had been waiting for that question since I sat down. Maybe since last night. I thought about how to answer it honestly without it sounding like either greed or performance. Part of me wants it, I said. I've worked hard enough to earn something like that. But another part of me feels like saying yes means I'm okay with how the whole thing was set up. And I'm not sure I am. Haley nodded slowly. She was looking at the fountain, not at me. For what it's worth, I don't think she meant it the way it landed. My mom has this habit of solving 3 problems at once and not telling anyone she's doing it. In her mind, She probably thought she was helping us both. Does that make it better? Not really, she said. But it makes it more her. She turned back toward me and her expression shifted into something more open, more unguarded than anything I had seen from her yet. I like you, Cole. She said it simply, without setup. I didn't plan on that. It's inconvenient and kind of ridiculous given everything. But I do. Before I could respond, her phone rang. We both looked at it sitting on the bench between us. Linda Marsh. Haley picked it up. Mom. A pause. What do you mean come over right now? Another pause, longer this time. The easy Linda turned to me. I watched you for 9 months. You're the kind of person who helps without being asked and works without needing an audience. When Haley told me she wanted someone genuine, I thought of you immediately. I want you to know that part was not calculated. When did I tell you that? Haley asked. Christmas 2 years ago. You said you were tired of meeting people who were performing a version of themselves. You said you wanted someone who just was who they were. Haley looked at me sideways. I looked straight ahead. Linda stood up. The promotion is yours, Cole. That is not connected to any of this, and it never was. And Haley. She waited until her daughter looked at her. If you want to see where this goes, then see where it goes. If you don't, that's your decision too. But don't let me be the reason either way. She picked up her coffee cup from the table. I'll be in my office. There's more food in the kitchen. Then she walked down the hall and left us there. Neither of us spoke for a moment. So, I said finally. So, Haley said. Your mom just apologized. Voluntarily. In her own house. I know. I'm a little stunned. I turned toward her on the couch. Do you believe her? About the promotion being separate from all of this. Haley thought about it for a real moment, not a quick one. Yeah, she said. It's too complicated to be a lie. She doesn't do complicated when a simple approach works. That's a very specific way to know someone. I've had 25 years of practice. I laughed. She did too. And just like that, the weight of the last 2 days shifted into something lighter and more manageable. I like you too, I said. In case that wasn't clear. She looked at me. It was getting there. I want to figure out what this is, even with everything attached to it. It's pretty attached, she said. You know that, right? My mom is your boss. Everyone at your office is going to figure it out eventually. It's going to be a whole thing. I know. And you still want to? Yeah, I said. I really do. She held my gaze for a moment longer, like she was checking whether I meant it. Then she leaned in and kissed me, and it was quiet and certain, the kind of thing that does not feel like a beginning so much as a confirmation of something that was already true. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. My mom is going to be completely unbearable about this, she said. Probably. She's going to act like she planned it all along. She kind of did. Haley laughed and leaned her head back against the couch. I can't believe this is my life. We stayed at Linda's house for another hour, eating pastries in the kitchen and talking about everything except work, which felt like a victory. When we finally left, I glanced back at the house and saw Linda standing at the window of her office. She did not wave. She just nodded once, the smallest acknowledgement, and turned back to whatever was on her desk. On Monday, I received an official letter about the assistant director role. It was exactly what I had worked toward, and it felt genuinely earned. On Wednesday, Haley sent me a photo of her grandfather at the hospital vending machine with the caption, plotting his next emergency. Very focused. Very committed. 2 weeks later, we had our 4th date at a bookstore that stayed open late, and neither of us bought a single book, but we stayed for 2 hours anyway. A month after that, she met Brody, who told her the entire story of the cereal box conversation from the night everything started. And she laughed until she had to sit down. It is still complicated. My boss is still her mom. There are still moments at the office that are genuinely awkward and probably always will be. But some of the best things in life arrive sideways, through a door you did not expect, set up by someone who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself. And sometimes the most unlikely beginning leads you exactly to where you were always supposed to end up.